If you're feeling like you're behind, if you're feeling like all of the noise out there that's going on, what people are talking about, if it feels like a lot, if it feels heavy, if you feel overwhelmed by it as a leader, if you feel like I'm not sure what direction to go, but I just know that I feel like I'm running on a wheel. I feel like things don't make sense. I'm not really sure what direction to go. You're going to want to listen to this today. I wanted to talk about this. Yesterday was my 50th birthday, and having lots of conversations with people who are turning 50, or conversations with clients of mine, or even friends of mine who own businesses who are kind of going through that or getting ready to go through that transition from one stage of their life into another. And I know I felt like this turning 50, and you're feeling like, oh my gosh, like I am not really sure what direction to go. I'm not really sure who to listen to, who not to listen to. Everything that I've always done, it feels like it's not working anymore. And like I said, I turned 50 yesterday, and I know for myself, and I really don't have any notes today either, for this week's session. I'm literally just talking from my heart. So, and I wanted to have this because like I said, I've talked to a lot of people who are kind of like, I think so many people are in this transition period, and people that I've talked to, myself included, for a long time, fought those transitions. So if you're feeling like, and going into to turning 50 and feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm getting old, oh my god, I am old, oh my gosh, like, and just feeling, I think for myself, like feeling over the past year, like, there was growth happening, there were things changing, there were a whole bunch of shifts going on, and it's kind of like you get into this uncomfortable this uncomfortable feeling. And the truth of the matter is, and I've experienced this throughout my life in different stages, where, and I'm one of those people, like I will absorb all kinds of stuff. I like to learn, I like to grow. I'm a high performance coach. Like I'm constantly looking for ways to learn new things, to develop, and to just be a better person, be a better leader, be a better coach, so that I can help more people. But I know as you're learning, as you're doing new things, as you're really stepping into that, it's hard. It's hard. And for me, turning 50 was hard. I know for some people, turning 30 was hard, turning 40 was hard. For me, 50 was hard. And I think it's because along the way, there's been all of these transitions that have happened, and all of this growth, all of this new knowledge, all of this learning. As I've developed as a person, as I've developed as a leader and a coach, as an advisor, these transitions happen. And turning 50 is a big one. I mean, you're on the planet for 50 years. Holy moly. That's like huge, right? So, I mean, you go through all the emotions. Like, sorry to say it, but you go through all the emotions of, oh my gosh, I'm leaving my 40s behind. Oh my gosh, I'm leaving. But like I said, we can relate this to business and to conversations I've had with so many leaders who, you're trying to learn new types of technology. You're trying to navigate. And I've had so many conversations with people that I deal with over in Ireland and Scotland and England, and just the whole navigation of the tariffs and all of the changes and all of the new things that we need to figure out and we need to implement and we need to do. It's a lot of change. It's a lot of change. It's a lot of transition. And I know for leaders, it's, what do I implement first? Do I implement this? Do I implement these three things, or these three pieces of software, or this new strategy, Or do I continue to do the things that I've always been doing? And the truth is that, like I said, you're learning, you're implementing, you're doing new things, you're you're finding out more about yourself, who you are, what's important to you, what your values are, and things shift, things change as you grow. And the truth is that it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. And a lot of people, when they get that uncomfortable feeling when they're going through that transition, or I've referenced it as the messy middle, people think they mistake and they say this uncomfortableness means I need to pull back, or this uncomfortableness means I need to continue doing the things that I've always done, instead of saying this uncomfortableness means that I am in this transition period. And I always say, I say it in my keynote, is that bridge and that resilience that is revealed and that comes up and comes out and comes forward, that radical resilience that you need in these transition periods is the bridge between where you are, what you've been through, who you are, and who you're meant to become, what you're meant to do, what that next level of leadership is that you need to step into. But people, like I said, they mistake it and they say, I'm so stressed, I'm so overwhelmed. And instead of saying, I'm going to continue to walk through this, even though I have no idea how it's going to turn out, they want to go the other direction. So I'm here to tell you, I'm here to say that if things feel like they're not working, if that old playbook that you've been playing with, whether it's just in life in general, it's in your business, it's the strategies that you've always implemented, if they're not working and it feels like things feel like a little chaotic, it's because something is asking you to go to that next level of leadership. Instead of focusing on, and I heard this the other day, a lot of small business owners, they just run a business. But what they really need to do is focus on, and I thought this was so interesting because I've never heard somebody reference it this way, but focus on building assets. But the only way that you're going to be able to build assets, and what I mean by that, I don't necessarily want to refer to it that way, but instead of just running a business, instead of just doing that, thinking about it from the standpoint of elevating your team and getting them to empowering them to be able to function on their own without you having to be involved in every single conversation, or building the infrastructure in your business with how things run so that you can run, like you can do more with less complication, with less like redundancy. Okay, redundancy in software, redundancy in you had 3 people doing the same thing. Like, so looking at it and saying, building that infrastructure, making the business more resilient by having the right focus, the right projects in place, the right initiatives in place. But all of this, if you have been functioning one way for so long, which I talk to leaders every day, all day, and I hear the same, I see the same pattern where everyone has been functioning the same way for so long. They want to get to here, but they're only committed to staying at this space, the space of just running their business, the space of doing things in their business the same way that they've always done them. And then they learn some new things. They learn a little bit more about AI. They learn a little bit more about technology. They learn a new strategy or whatever it is. And then they can't figure out why there feels like there's friction, or they can't figure out why certain things don't feel in alignment anymore. Certain menu items, restaurant owners where certain menu items just don't feel right anymore, or hours that they're operating, or the way that the business is structuring. That's why I always tell people, just because the rest of your industry does it one way doesn't mean that you need to do it that way. So for me, and if I can relate this back to turning 50, I've been functioning a certain way, but growing every decade. And then 50 hits and it's like a huge milestone. And it's like, I want something bigger. I want something, I want to continue to grow. I want to continue to build, but I'm also in this transition phase where it becomes more about being a mentor, more about, which I've been a mentor for years, but even more so being a mentor and shaping the next generation and building that next generation, or that next phase of my businesses, I should say. But that's going to require that you have to be able to hold a whole different capacity than what you've been holding for so long. So what does that look like in a business? It looks like maybe taking a look at offers that you sell, products that you sell, or even just the way that you do business, and saying, if you've seen your revenue decline, or if you've just seen that product, you're not moving inventory as fast as you were before, it's time to look at things differently. It's time to look at it and say, and again, if you've been frustrated because everything that you've been trying, if you've been trying e-commerce for so long and there's something just isn't right and it's not working, it might just be that you're in a transition phase. And this shows up a lot for founders who are, again, getting to that point in their life where you want to start thinking about what's next. I worked with a client last year, and she was in her mid 30s and has a business, has built it to multi seven figures. And she started to feel like something wasn't in alignment. And she thought she needed to shut some stuff down, or she thought, well, maybe we should actually like build out more products here, or, and it was no. It was because you're being asked to go to a higher level as a leader and put certain things in place so that you can continue with that transition. But in order to go through that transition, it's going to be a little painful. It's going to be a little hard. It's going to be frustrating because that old part of you, that old part of your business wants to hang on, while this new part is saying, hey, I'm over here. Like, catch up. This is what you're meant to do. This is who you're meant to be. And I think as as we just continue to shift and change and grow as a society, as businesses, as people, we have to be willing to shift and grow and change and really step into that next level of who we are. And, if you're sitting there thinking, like, I had a conversation with a leader probably about a month ago, maybe more. And we were having this conversation about, defining your philosophy as a business owner and defining your leadership agreements, that this is the type of leader that you want to be. And I remember asking him, and saying 2026 is going to require that you show up differently, that you step into that higher version of you, that next version of you, and constantly be working on improving. And I remember this leader saying to me, well, I don't understand, Theresa, because I'm great the way that I am. I don't need to change. I'm great the way that I am. Like, this is who I am. I'm great the way that I am. I don't need to change. I don't need to grow. Truth. And I mean, I'm even like, I have like no words because if we're not consistently growing and learning and becoming better, well, then what's left, right? So I want to just say that, again, like hitting 50 and hitting that big milestone, and there's a lot involved in it. My business partner, It was the 5th year of her passing. Um, and she passed away in 2021. So, and it was 3 days before my birthday. So there's a lot there. There's a lot with, again, just getting to that transition piece. And the transition is hard. I talk to a lot of founders about what's, again, the conversation about like what's next. Is this, we're building this operational resilience into your business. We're fixing the infrastructure. We're, increasing the capacity of the team. But what's next? Is this something that you want to find a successor within your business, identify somebody employees who you can work out some kind of a transition deal, and the whole thing, and it's a lot of transaction conversation, but the transition piece is the part that is the most challenging, but it's also the most rewarding to face, because the transition requires you to do the work that most people aren't willing to do, to ask yourself those really hard questions, to really get uncomfortable. And you hear this a lot, getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. But really, that uncomfortable is really being okay with not knowing what exactly is going to happen, or what something means, or things just feel confusing, things feel overwhelming. I feel like everybody's running so fast into the technology world and I'm so far behind. It's going to require, that's the uncomfortableness. Or even saying, I'm going through this transition, you know from being laid off to being rehired, to being laid off to opening up my own business, or just taking the business that I originally started and transitioning it to the next successor, when this was my baby for like how long, or this was the thing that I created from scratch. Like, it's a lot, and it's not easy. People think it's easy. And I've also seen people who just brush by stuff. They rush through it, they brush by it, and they don't really face it. And to be completely transparent with all of you, that was me when I transitioned from corporate into the world of entrepreneurship. I brushed by all of it. I was like, I got this, boom, like, and just kept moving. That's what high performers do, right? We just keep moving. We're like, yep, I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn. I'm going to implement next. Learn, implement next. Learn, implement next. But who we are from the inside out doesn't catch up. And when it does catch up, it hits you over the head like a ton of bricks. But that happens because that transition, that reshaping, is reshaping you into that next, that who you're meant to become. And it's not just fluff and stuff to like say that, it's the truth. Because if you're a leader and you have been leading the same way, the same principles, the same mindset as you have for 10, 15, 20, even just 5 years, without doing anything new, or without challenging yourself, or without learning something new, or having a different perspective, or whatever that is, eventually you're going to hit a wall, that wall of being willing to grow. And it's going to come with friction. And then when it comes with friction and you're on that bridge, you're either going to run from it, which a lot of people do, or you're going to say, okay, like, I'm just going to get back into the fire and I'm going to be reshaped into that next version of me, that person that I'm meant to become, so that I can be a better mentor, so that I can build that life of my dreams, so I can build that business of my dreams. But we can't do it if we don't believe it. We can't do it if we're constantly in like just forward, like you're just constantly like in go 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 mode, and we don't take that time to say, okay, What's next? That transition, the transition is where all the magic happens. The transition is where all the learning happens. The transition is that, again, that bridge between where you are and who you're meant to become. So if you're feeling frustrated, if you're feeling behind, if you're feeling like, and this is the other thing that happens, a consequence of feeling this way and not being willing to sit with it. What happens is we start looking at all these other people and all these other businesses and just trying to emulate. We start looking at all these other businesses and saying, well, they're successful. So you know what? We're going to use ChatGPT and we're going to use it for everything. And we're just going to get rid of, no, no. This is where we learn to shift our mindset, to elevate it so that everything else comes from there. Because what we believe to be possible ends up impacting the results that we actually physically see. So if you're feeling like this, let me just tell you that it's a bridge. It's a bridge between, and that bridge and trying to get across it, it's hard. But the harder it is, the better the outcome, the bigger the outcome, the more amazing the outcome is on the other side of it. And like I said, most leaders aren't willing to do this. Most leaders have been leading the same way for decades, have been leading the same way, doing the same thing, like thinking things are going to change, and they're not. Because the way that they're going to change is you have to change. You have to be willing to grow. And a business can only grow so much as the leader is willing to grow. And especially if you've been functioning as that operator and just in the middle of everything, it's only going to take you so far. And that's where the alignment of here's where we want to go, here's all the goals that we want to achieve, but what's not catching up is your capacity. So hang in there. If you're feeling that overwhelm, if you're feeling that frustration, if you're feeling like things are out of alignment, if you're feeling like you're so far behind, you're exactly where you're meant to be. And I know this to be true because I've been through it many times over myself. And I'm here to tell you, just hang in there. Hang in there and remember that this is leading to something even bigger and better. All right. Have a great rest of your week.